Yeah.
Justin Trudeau, our prime minister, and it galls me to call that traitor that, but that's what he is right now. It was only, I think, about a week and a half ago that he went and did a press conference where he told Canadians, go out and run your credit cards up because the economy needs stimulation. Well, what's he doing? He's setting them up to not be able to pay their bills.
Right.
So that when the central bank digital currencies come in and the government steps in and says, well, okay, well, you can't pay your bills. So you tell you what, we're going to wipe out all your debts. Oh, but you're not going to own anything anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly what they're going to do. And, I mean, that's what George W. Bush told the American people after 9/11, right? He said, go spend money. And, that led, I think, directly to the 2008 crash, right? I mean, these people are liars and they are evil. And it's just twisted. One reason I think Canada and Australia have been targeted the way that they have been is because you're resource-rich countries with large land masses and relatively small populations that are clustered together already into sort of urban areas. And that has just made it very easy for them to impose this control on unsuspecting people. So I think if you look at what's been done in Canada and Australia, you could consider those like 15-minute countries, basically. So what they've done on a national level, taking away rights and traumatizing people, that's going to be done more acutely when we move into the smart cities.
Yes.
And Toronto is like the smart city of the world. I think, people aren't talking about it as much, but it is so far advanced. And that's going to be the engine for the economy, because when people start to realize this, when they're frustrated, you have to have a savior come in, and the savior is going to be the big corporations, and they're going to roll out this new inclusive capitalism, multicultural capitalism. It's got a million different names, regenerative capitalism, and so on. And what it claims to do is to pivot the economy toward this model of creating true value. Well, as we've said, that is subject to their definition of it. And it's going to be based on, what's profitable for them, what they've decided that we need. And it's going to be a giant nanny state for a while. And then it's going to be an abuser state.
Yes.
But how are they going to do it? Well, one of the prongs of sustainable development is to manage risk, right? And our resetters have done their homework, and they know that they're going to create social instability with these situations. And they're worried about getting this ideological backlash. This is what you see on the screen right now. And they want to make sure that capitalism's popularity doesn't wane, because populism and nationalism and protectionism, those policies actually would fight this off. So they don't want growing movements in support of those. So what are they going to do? They're going to offer all sorts of feel-good programs and stimulus checks from the government, various benefits, and they're going to wash it over with this veneer of good feeling and community sentiment. So that moves us into the new economy, which is about corporate purpose. I mean, doesn't it sound cold and steely to you? But they're going to use this new model of corporate purpose for capitalism. It's going to guide capitalism from here on out. And we're going to see that not simply the pursuit of financial profits and economic efficiency, but the pursuit of true value is where we're headed. And so this is going to lower the risk of social and economic stability. That is, like that the people rise up and fight off their abusers. And it's also going to make a big profit for the people who are pushing this agenda. So, prioritizing true value creation. This, by the way, is a white paper from the World Business Council on Sustainable Development called Reinventing Capitalism, a Transformation Agenda. So just the same garbage that the WEF was putting out with the finance industry saving the world. And you can see here, business models must contribute to a flourishing society. Earlier, we saw that in the UN graphic about the ICT sector, that you're going to have 8 billion people leading dignified lives, dignified, flourishing society. It sounds wonderful, but it's all about managing how much energy, how much carbon you use. And they want to get it down to the lowest possible level. So here we see these are some different ways that business is going to be adjusted in the new economic order. And we see that capital markets are going to properly value inclusive, sustainable business practices, rewarding the companies with the greatest positive social environmental impact. So if you are a small business and you're liberty loving, or you're just trying to, make a decent profit so that you can pay your bills in the sort of old school way that we think about, you are not going to have access to capital investment because you're not participating in this project of creating a flourishing society along the lines of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So this is how all of the businesses, the supply chains are going to be controlled. It's through the fact that no institutional investors will give capital to companies that are not performing very highly on the measuring and managing of ESG indices. And you can see here that ESG is real tied to the Sustainable Development Goals,
which basically turns all of finance economics into an old boys club, owned by the globalists. They're companies which can cook their books to meet these ESG goals, and they do because they're not ethical. They know that everything they're telling people about man-made global warming, climate change is utter bunk. It's a control mechanism.
Yes.
So they cook their books to make it look like they're complying with these things so that they get the investments, and all of these new startups that want to do this, they can't get any money because they're not part of that old boys club.
Right. And, we've got to ask ourselves, how are we going to be able to audit this kind of system? That's sort of a tool that we like to use in the last limping, stages of our Western representative governments. We like to think of the power of an audit, but you have to have very high capacity computing power and super expertise to be able to unravel the mess that these companies are fabricating. And we're not going to have access to it. They talk about open data plans. You might get a little picture here or there, but it is nothing like what these giant corporations are going to have. So we're really at a loss to even understand how the tabulations are being made, if the data is being manipulated. It's all a farce, right? And that's why perception management.
Where the flow of information is all one direction.
Yeah.
It all goes to them. We don't get anything back other than what they choose to show us, which is part of their propaganda and censorship.
Yes.
But in terms of that huge pipeline of information, data collection and monitoring that they're gathering, that all goes in one direction, uphill to them. None of it comes back down the hill to us. And we certainly don't get to see what they're doing.